Hello and welcome to episode 5 of the barn door restoration. Last episode I removed the body. If you want to get caught up on that, there is a link in the description. So I started by removing the floor, and what I did, I just cut each side of the cross members to pull it out. So I didn't disturb any of the cross member structures. I didn't want to damage them before I documented them properly. So once the floor is off, I spent some time documenting all that. The process I use for that is I sketch up the part, dimension it, and then I model it in CAD. I use a Fusion 360. And once I have the 3D model, I generate drawn views off of that with dimensions. And then I print them out and bring them back here, and I double check them to ensure my drawing was correct. Just make sure everything is right. It's a lot easier to do now than it is when I go and put it back together and realize that I've made a mistake in my drawing, recording my dimension or creating the drawing or something. So I ensure all that is correct before I start tearing things off. So in the rear floor structure of these, all the control tubes are welded into the bottom of it. So with all the controls in the front and the transmission motor in the back, things like the clutch cable, the throttle cable, heater controls, park brake cables, they all come in tubes from the front and come out to the back, and they're welded into the structure. I was hoping I could save them, but basically every tube had at least one spot that was going to have to be fixed. And it's a little difficult welding them because you don't want to get any protrusion inside the tube. That'll affect the cables. So I'm just going to have to put those all in new. Not really a surprise. So basically, just cut the welds for those tubes, and the cross members all just weld onto the frame. There's two types of cross members. There's like an I-beam, which is actually two channels that are spot welded together. They tend to rust in between and swell. So there's 3 of those. And then there's 3 top hats, one at the bottom of the bulkhead, and then 2 in the rear. And probably called the top hat because the profile is top hat. So it's just thin steel. And so everything got cut off, cleaned up the welds. Got to inspect the frame. The rear section here of the engine cradle and everything, torsion tube, is very good shape. There's no pitting, it's solid, nice and thick, there's no rust inside. So very happy with that. The rear frames, the left side was good, passenger side just has a spot I have to replace. It's a pretty isolated spot, so it's an easy fix. The frames in these buses were in 2 pieces. So there's the front sections that were parallel, and then there was a welded joint, and then the rear section that spread out. Now in these older buses, they had a reinforcement plate inside the frame that was plug welded on. So what happened was that it rotted and rusted in between the reinforcement plate and the frame. It made the frame very thin right there, and left almost basically there's holes through it on the bottom lip. I knew that part was going to have to be replaced anyway. But looking more into it, I also have a few thin spots where the cross members were. They need to be fixed. There's a thin spot at the bottom of one of the outriggers. It's pretty common. They fill with dirt and they kind of rot there. There's also a thin spot below the torsion tube. And there's a thin spot in the front frame where the inner reinforcement ends. So basically, instead of just changing, the 6 inches front and back on each side, I'm just going to change the whole piece on each side. So basically put new frame here to here. It'll be a lot faster, a lot easier, and it'll be better when it's done. So I guess that's about all I wanted to cover in this episode. Next episode, I will be stripping the front off. It's going to be a little more work because I need to save all those parts so I can rebuild them. If you want to see that, please subscribe so you don't miss it. Thanks for watching.